Let me describe someone to you, and I want you to be honest with yourself about whether this sounds familiar. They graduated college, got a decent job, maybe not their dream job, but a respectable one. They make somewhere between 55 and 95,000 a year. They bought a house in a decent neighborhood because that's what adults do. They drive a reasonable car, nothing crazy, maybe a 3-year-old SUV with a monthly payment. They've got a 401k they contribute to when they remember. They carry a little credit card debt, but nothing alarming. They go on one vacation a year, usually somewhere domestic, and they feel mildly guilty about it the entire time. On paper, this person is doing fine. Their parents are proud, their coworkers think they've got it together. Society looks at them and says, "That's a responsible adult." And yet, if you ask this person at 11 p.m. on a Sunday night, when the house is quiet and the anxiety creeps in, are you actually getting ahead? The answer is almost always the same. No, they're treading water. They have been treading water for years. And the worst part is they can't figure out why, because they did everything they were told to do. If you saw yourself in that description even a little bit, tell me in the comments which part hit you the hardest. The house, the car, the debt, or the subscriptions? I want to know. My name is Tom. I spent a decade following the exact same playbook before I realized the playbook itself was the problem. If you've ever felt like you're doing all the right things financially and somehow still feel stuck, hit subscribe because this is the video nobody in your life is going to tell you. Here's the thing I wish someone had told me 10 years ago. The American middle class isn't failing despite following the rules. The middle class is failing because of the rules. Every single responsible financial decision you've been taught to make since you were 18 years old is designed to do one thing: keep you spending. Not saving, not investing, not building wealth. Spending. The entire middle-class financial playbook is an extraction machine disguised as a life plan. I call it the Respectability Trap, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Let me walk you through the playbook step by step and show you exactly where the money goes. Step 1 of the playbook: go to college, get a degree. This is presented as an investment in your future, and for some people, it genuinely is. But here's what nobody tells the 17-year-old signing those loan documents. The average student loan debt for a 2023 graduate is about $29,400, according to the College Board. That doesn't sound catastrophic until you realize that at a 6.5% interest rate on a standard 10-year repayment plan, you're paying over $10,000 in interest alone. Your $29,000 education actually cost you nearly $40,000. And that's average. Plenty of people graduate with $50,000, $60,000, $80,000 in debt. A 2023 Federal Reserve study found that the median net worth of a household headed by someone under 35 with student debt was roughly $23,000 less than households without it. You haven't even started your financial life and you're already playing from behind. But here's the subtle part most people miss. The loan isn't just taking your money, it's taking your options. When you owe $400 a month in loan payments for the next decade, you can't afford to take the risky job at the startup that might have changed your career. You can't move to the cheaper city. You can't take 6 months off to figure out what you actually want. You need the steady paycheck to service the debt. The debt doesn't just cost money, it costs freedom. And freedom is the raw material of wealth. So before you even earn your first real paycheck, the playbook has already locked you into a decade of mandatory payments and eliminated your most valuable asset as a young person: the ability to take risks. Step 2 of the playbook: get the steady job with benefits. This sounds like wisdom, stability, security. And look, I'm not saying quit your job and become a day trader, but let's talk about what a salary job actually is in economic terms. You are selling a fixed amount of your time for a fixed amount of money. Your upside is capped. Your employer's upside is not. If you generate $200,000 in value for your company and they pay you $65,000, that's not exploitation in any dramatic sense. That's just the deal. But it means you are permanently limited in how much value you can capture from your own labor. The middle class is taught to optimize within the salary box. Get the raise, get the promotion, move to the slightly better company. But you're always inside the box. The wealthy don't play in the box. They own the box. They capture uncapped upside from assets, businesses, equity, and investments that grow while they sleep. And because you're busy optimizing inside the salary box, you never have the time, energy, or capital to build anything outside of it. The playbook told you the salary was the destination. It's actually the ceiling. Now here's where the respectability trap really starts to bite. Step 3. Buy the house. This is the big one, the crown jewel of middle-class respectability, home ownership. Your parents want you to buy a house. Your in-laws want you to buy a house. Your coworkers, your friends, random people at parties, everyone has an opinion, and that opinion is always the same. Stop throwing money away on rent. Let me tell you about my cousin Derek. He and his wife made about $120,000 combined. They saved up $40,000 for a down payment, which took them 3 years of aggressive saving. They bought a $380,000 house in a decent suburb outside Charlotte. They felt incredible the day they signed. They'd made it. Here's what actually happened to their money. That $40,000 down payment is now locked inside a wall. It produces zero cash flow. It can't be invested, it can't be touched without selling the house or taking on more debt. Then there's the mortgage. At a 7% rate on a 30-year loan, when you add up principal, interest, property taxes, insurance, and the maintenance that the Harvard Joint Center for Housing Studies estimates at 1 to 2% of the home's value annually, Derek's house costs him close to $850,000 over 30 years. His $380,000 house is actually an $850,000 commitment. Now here's the number that really matters. If Derek had taken that $40,000 and invested it in a broad market index fund and added $500 a month, which is less than the gap between his total housing costs and what he'd pay in comparable rent, after 30 years, that portfolio would be worth approximately $1.4 million. His house, even being generous with 3.5% annual appreciation, is worth about $1.07 million. But he paid $850,000 for it. His actual gain is roughly $220,000 before selling costs. The investment portfolio wins by over $1 million. I'm not saying owning a home is always a mistake. I'm saying the way we're taught to buy a home, maxing out what the bank says we can afford, is often a $1 million mistake. So before you even get to the sensible car and the subscriptions, the house alone has already turned a 6-figure income into a near zero savings rate. Step 4 of the playbook: buy the sensible car. Not the flashy one, the reliable, practical, slightly above your station SUV or sedan. The average new car payment in America as of early 2024 is about $734 a month, according to Edmunds. Used car, about $525. Let's be conservative and say you're a responsible middle-class person paying $550 a month on a used car loan. That's $6,600 a year on a depreciating asset. Over a 40-year working career, assuming you always have a car payment, which most Americans do, that's $264,000 in car payments alone. If you invested that $550 a month instead at a 10% average return, you'd have over $3.2 million in 40 years. Yes, that number assumes you stick with it for decades. That's the whole point of compounding. Most people never even start, which is exactly why most people retire with almost nothing. Step 5. Insure everything, subscribe to everything, automate everything. The modern middle-class life runs on subscriptions and recurring charges. Insurance premiums, streaming services, gym memberships, meal kit deliveries, cloud storage, premium apps, security monitoring. A 2022 study by C+R Research found the average American spends about $219 a month on subscriptions. Many people, when audited, discovered they were actually spending over $100 more than they thought because charges had become invisible. This is the part of the trap I find most elegant from a design perspective. Each individual charge is so small that questioning it feels petty. You're not going to change your life by canceling Netflix. But the system doesn't need any single charge to be large. It needs the aggregate to be large and invisible. Death by 1,000 cuts. $219 a month is $2,628 a year. Over 30 years invested, that's roughly $440,000. Again, compound interest only works if you let it work over time. And again, most people never redirect these small amounts because each one feels insignificant. That's the whole design. Now let's zoom out and look at the full picture. The typical middle-class person following the playbook has their income divided roughly like this. 25 to 35% goes to housing, 10 to 15% to transportation, 10 to 15% to debt service, 10 to 15% to insurance and subscriptions, 20 to 25% to necessities like food, utilities, and healthcare. That leaves somewhere between 0 and 10% for actual wealth building. And that's in a good month. In a bad month, when the car needs tires or the HVAC breaks or the kid needs braces, the savings rate goes negative and the credit card comes out. This is the respectability trap in its full form. Every category of spending I just listed is considered responsible. Nobody is going to criticize you for paying your mortgage, your car loan, your insurance, or your student loans. You're doing the right thing. And that's exactly the problem. The right thing has been engineered to consume approximately 95% of your income while leaving you with the feeling that you're building a stable life. The wealthy don't follow this playbook. They do the opposite. They minimize fixed costs obsessively so they can maximize the percentage of income flowing into assets that grow. A 2019 study published in the Quarterly Journal of Economics found that the biggest predictor of wealth accumulation wasn't income level, it was savings rate. The gap between what you earn and what you spend predicted wealth better than income, education, or inheritance. So if the entire playbook is rigged to keep you treading water, what does an alternative actually look like in real life? It comes down to one number. There are 4 moves that get you out of the respectability trap without burning your life down. Think of them as a checklist, not a revolution. First, stop optimizing for respectability and start optimizing for the gap. The gap is the difference between what you earn and what you spend. Every financial decision you make should be filtered through one question. Does this increase my gap or shrink it? When you're looking at that house, don't ask, can I afford the monthly payment? Ask, what does this do to my gap? When you're looking at that car, don't ask, is this a sensible choice? Ask, what does this do to my gap? My friend Rachel makes $78,000 a year. She rents a modest apartment for $1,100. She drives a 2015 Civic she bought for cash. She has no subscriptions she doesn't actively use. Her gap is about 35% of her income. She invests the gap every month into low-cost index funds. She's 34 years old, and her investment portfolio is already over $210,000. She will be a millionaire before she's 50 without a single dramatic life change. She just refused to follow the playbook. The game is not income. The game is the gap. Second, question every permanent expense. The respectability trap works because it turns variable expenses into fixed ones. A car loan is a commitment. A mortgage is a commitment. A subscription is designed to be forgotten. Go through your life and identify every recurring payment. Then ask a brutal question about each one. If I didn't already have this, would I buy it today at this price? If the answer is no, that's a signal. Maybe you don't cancel it today, but at minimum, you acknowledge that it's a choice, not a requirement. If you wouldn't buy it today at this price, it has no business being a permanent line item. Third, stop buying a lifestyle and start buying time. Every dollar you invest is buying you a tiny piece of future freedom. At a 4% withdrawal rate, every $100 you invest buys you $4 per year of permanent passive income. That doesn't sound like much until you do the math over decades. $500 a month invested for 25 years at 10% gives you roughly $590,000. At a 4% withdrawal rate, that's $23,600 a year in passive income. You just bought yourself a part-time salary that never requires you to show up. The middle-class playbook tells you to buy comfort now. The wealth playbook tells you to buy freedom later. Comfort buys today. Investing buys days you never have to work again. Fourth, build income outside the salary box. This is where I really diverge from the standard middle-class advice. The playbook says, work hard, get promoted, maybe switch companies for a raise. That's fine as far as it goes. But your salary has a ceiling, and your expenses don't. The only way to structurally escape the trap is to build income that isn't capped by an employer's budget. That could be a side business. It could be freelancing. It could be investing in assets that produce cash flow. It doesn't have to replace your job tomorrow, but it needs to exist. You don't need to quit your job. You just need one stream of income your employer doesn't control. Look, I lived the playbook for years. I had the respectable job, the reasonable car, the approved by society apartment, and I was going nowhere. The month I started tracking where every dollar went, I realized that roughly 92% of my income was consumed by things that society told me were necessary, but that weren't actually building anything. 8 cents of every dollar I earned was working for my future. The rest was working for someone else's. The day I redesigned my life around the gap instead of around respectability was the day my financial trajectory changed permanently. I didn't make more money initially. I just stopped letting other people's expectations decide how my money got spent. The respectability trap is the most dangerous financial trap in America because it doesn't feel like a trap. It feels like success. It feels like adulthood. It feels like doing the right thing. And that's exactly why so many smart, hardworking, well-intentioned middle-class people wake up at 55 with 30 years of mortgage payments behind them and realize they never actually built wealth. They just cycled money through a system that was designed to keep them cycling. You don't have to do that. You just have to see the system for what it is and choose differently. If this video shifted how you think about money, hit that subscribe button. I put out content every week that challenges the financial rules you've been taught to follow blindly. And if you want to see how I personally structure my finances to maximize the gap, check out the video right here. In that video, I literally open my own numbers and show you line by line where my money goes each month. I'll see you in the next one.